I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, October the 6th, brought to you in part by Safeguard 32SG Mineral Dewormer. That product is a Type C free choice mineral containing fenbendazole. It attacks the energy metabolism function in the parasite until they're eradicated. For more information, go to Merck Animal Health. Higher inputs, and I know you guys are saying, oh no, I can't handle any higher inputs. Enough is enough, calf rope, I can't take any more. Well, our fuel is going to get higher, at least in the short term here. Our fearless President Magoo, despite attempts and pleading of asking OPEC to hold their oil production at least steady levels. On Wednesday, OPEC announced that they're going to lower oil production by $2 million barrels per day. So that is going to affect the global supply of oil. It's going to, even just the news is going to make your gas prices go up. It's such a shame. 2 years ago, the largest oil producer was Texas, followed by Saudi Arabia as second place. It's unbelievable. We've got these precious resources here, but we are rich in resources. Once the technology gets there, once you can pull a 24-foot gooseneck loaded with cows up a hill with a headwind, and get a couple of 100 miles to the sale barn when you need to, or you get one of those electric cars stuck in a snowdrift somewhere in the wintertime, and it'll run to get you through the night into the morning. Some things like that. Once the technology gets there, that'll be great. We can all have electric cars and pickups and semis and everything, but we're not there yet. And we've got enough of these fossil fuels to get us there. Just to look at all the capabilities that we've gotten over the last 50 years, where we're at now with computers and the like and all this thing. We can do things we never thought we'd be able to do. Likely, if we continue to invest and push into that kind of technology, we will get to that point, but we're not there yet. I was in South Texas earlier this week and stopped at a truck stop. I filled up with diesel, went inside, sat down, ate barbecue, went to the restroom, bought a bunch of snacks, come back. The people that were sitting at the handful of electric charge stations were still sitting there, and you could tell by the way they looked, they were in no hurry. Because they knew they were going nowhere. They were sitting there. Who wants to travel that way? You can't travel that way. We don't have the technology yet, but we've got enough oil in reserve under our feet to get us there. Let's go ahead and use it. Let's pump it. Let's do it. Let's quit letting all these third world countries get rich by pumping their oil and then use ours. It's just unbelievable what we've got into here. But your oil's going to go up. Your fuel's going to go up. It's getting into winter time. Of course, going to have heat and oil and things like that. We're just not there yet, people. But your feeding cattle, your cost of gains are going to be higher because we've got no cheap feedstuffs at all. Your cost of gain is going to be running from $1.20 to $1.40, maybe even $1.50. Who knows? Some of these cattle are closing out right now. If they had good gains and they performed real well, they're coming back with cost of gains of $1.20 in the Southern Plains. If you got the cattle bought right, if they gained their heads off and everything worked out right, they might wash. They might make a little bit of money. You're kind of going back and forth right there. Some people are still losing money on their closeouts. Talked to a guy on Wednesday that making nearly $200 a head. What did he buy? He bought some big old plain cutting bulls that were thin and green and empty, and he sent them in there, and they absolutely gained their heads off, and he scratched out a little bit of profit feeding the cattle straight up. And you look, and people are wanting to go, well, I got to go back, I got to do the exact same thing again. I can't buy fat calves and expect them to gain like hard yearlings with a little bit of age on them. It just won't work. But then you talk to some guys that are sending their cattle in on some kind of a grid, and they had 25% primes and all that, and they scratched out a profit. Well, I've got to go back and I've got to do the exact same thing. It's going to be tough now. Unless we get our fat cattle market up there, and it's going the wrong direction. Our cattle futures promised us we were going to be $1.50 something right now, and I told you guys you're going to have to show it to me before I can believe it. Now I understand what everything says, and I believe that we need to get somewhere north of 150, and I believe that we will, but I still don't think I'll believe that 150 cash price. Somebody will have to show it to me and prove it to me that we got it. We're here where we deserve to get a better market, and we're going the wrong direction here, guys. But we've also got to have the few cattle sellers that are in the negotiated market. They've got to ask more, demand more for the cattle. I talked to you guys about on Tuesday, we had a major get very aggressive in a brick and mortar sale barn, buying over, nearly 1,500 head of cattle. Why would they do that? Because they desperately need the cattle. You guys understand that? If you've got the cattle, we know that we're very current, both north and south. We haven't gotten really short yet, and supposedly we're going to get really short on market ready supplies. Especially in the northern plains as we go forward through this fall. But you guys have to make it happen, and I realize that the burden shouldn't be on you, few guys that still sell negotiated cash. But you've got a whole industry riding on your coattails, and we're rooting for you. We're not gonna pay your bill whenever they blackball you with Packer retaliation and won't call you back or won't take any of your cattle, and then they get overdone and inefficient. But that's a heck of a way for this industry to run, but that's kind of where we're at right now. But cost of gain is going to be higher. Interest, we haven't thought about interest for several years, but now our interest is getting higher, and it's big enough to make a difference, guys. And so that's going to get bigger. And as hard as it is on your cattle feeders, it's harder yet on your cow-calf producers. Look at these cow-calf producers. They made it through 2 years of drought. One in the north, one in the southern plains. Guys have been just tightening their belt, getting by, saving every bit of forage that they had and using it sparingly, trying to get by, and they think, gosh, all these other people sold out and they couldn't do it. Numbers going to get tight, and I'm going to be able to sell my calves really high, and we're still in the drought. There's no place to turn those calves out, and look at the market. It's going south, and not a buck or two a week, 10 or 20 bucks a week maybe south in some places is terrible. And most of those guys, they rely on that cash price. They've got to have, it's not just a trade of equity for them. They've got to have cash money out of those calves. And a lot of them figure that they got to have at least $1,000 a head. A lot of them figure maybe $1,200 a head to keep their operation going. But they've got to have that money. They've got to have that money. They got to buy tires. They got to buy fuel. They got to buy, tractors. They have to buy pickups. They've got to buy, boots for the kids' feet and things for their wife to wear. They've got to have that money. They're making land payments all the time. They've got payments on everything. Too many of them probably have, 40-foot living quarters roping trailers and big King Ranch F450s to pull them around seasonally. But that's their choice, and sometimes it might be hard to do that if they don't have a lot of inherited money. But I'm talking about the ones that are trying to scratch out a living on their land. They've got to have money. And earlier in the fall or late in the summer, we were seeing most all of our 500-pound calves bring $2 a pound or more. Now in the Southern Plains, most of your 5-weight steer calves are averaging in the 170s. Well, if you thought you needed $1,000 a head, that's not doing it. Even if you got $2 a pound for your 5-weight steer calves, you're figuring on that for the heifers. They're not going to do it. 5 weights in the Southern Plains are averaging in the 170s. The Northern Plains is a whole lot better. Of course, the cattle that they got up there are worth more. But, we're in tough times right here. And, it's easier to say tighten your belt than it is to live it. But, I assume that if we get supplies tight enough that we'll get these price levels up here where producers can make a handsome living. Maybe not handsome, but at least make a living, scratch out a living, but we're sure hoping that. Well, we've actually had some rain chances down here in the Texas Panhandle. I was back home here middle of the week, all day long on Wednesday, in and around the Texas Panhandle, around the Amarillo area. It tried to rain. It's just been too damn dry to rain, but it just kind of trickled and pissed all day and didn't really do anything. But there was a few spots. Talked to some friends of mine down in the southwestern part of the Texas Panhandle. A friend of mine from Nazareth, Texas, which would be between Tulia and Dimmitt, got 30 hundredths. That's a pretty good rain. I mean, we're not like you guys up in the Midwest or in the Southeast that think a rain's got to be a couple of inches. 30 hundredths, that's enough to do something. We're praising God for 30 hundredths. Get 30 hundredths on that wheat that's standing but hasn't rooted down yet and hasn't had a drink since it was planted. That helps. It'll help quite a bit. We've got rain chances down here in the Texas Panhandle for about the next 5 days or so. We're looking forward to it. Better rain chances than we had on Wednesday. It looks like it could go over and get the western side of Oklahoma, but I don't know. I don't know if Kansas is going to get much help at all. It's hard to believe that we'd get chances and they wouldn't up in Kansas, but talk to the guys in Kansas. They desperately need some relief up there. We sure hope they get it. Talk about your board on Wednesday. October live cattle futures up 47 cents at 144.67. December up 42 cents at 147.92. Back months up 15 to up 67 cents. Feeder cattle for October up 190 at 176.55. November up 212 at 177.32, and your back months were up 57 cents to up $2. Talk about your grains. Corn was, it's just up a penny, down a penny, not doing anything. Up a penny on Wednesday at 6.84 bushel. Now beans have been kind of volatile here the last several sessions, and they were again on Wednesday down 13 3/4 cents. Closing regular trading on Wednesday at 13.69 3/4. Fat cattle trade kind of continued, but we really haven't established where our market's at. I think we could sure gain a buck, but they have to demand it. Your sellers have to dig in and just demand that they get those prices before they'll get them, and we haven't seen a lot of trade yet. We have a few people kind of giving in at steady money, just taking that and keeping their packer buyer happy. But somebody's going to have to dig in at some point, and if you had some really good cattle that would grade a high quality grade and you had some numbers on them, that's the only real premium in the fat cattle business is volume. That's what they want. You could get more money for them, but Colorado's confidential. We'll never find out about that. Iowa, 1,400 head on Wednesday, confirmed. Live sales 145 to 147. Dress sales 228 to 230. Both of those would be in the higher end of last week's trading range there. So not necessarily higher, but sure fully steady to firm. Nebraska, 2,200 head. Live sale was 144 1/4. Dressed at 230. Kansas didn't trade anything and hasn't really traded anything so far this week. Texas did have 1,150 head string sell at 143, and that would be steady money, but we're expecting we could gain at least $1 in the Southern Plains unless the futures falls out of bed here later in the week. Talk about your box beef cutout values. Your packers are trying to get them higher, but they can't move product at that. They price that stuff. It's just what they can move the product at. So it's not necessarily a negotiated price. It's what they have to lower it to move the product. They raised it earlier in the week, tried to move product. Evidently, they had to come back a little bit middle of the week. And choice cuts on Wednesday afternoon were down 98 cents at 247.06. Select was down 269 at 219.22. Your slaughter, well, we've yet to see them cut back on the slaughter. Every analyst said that we were going to see them slow the change speeds down. We have not seen them do that significantly, if at all. But up through the first 3 days of this week, 383,000 harvested. That's 3,000 more than last week, 20,000 more than the same week a year ago. Talk about what else is going on. Livestock Risk Services with Dakota Moss, headquartered out of the Exchange Building there at Oklahoma National Stockyards. They are your LRP specialists, and he's got a lot of agents working all around every direction from Oklahoma City out to your neighboring states, and they can definitely help you lay off some of this risk on your cattle. Look at those LRP strike prices for unborn calves. If you guys are cow-calf producers, you can go out there and lock in your price for selling those calves at the weight you typically sell. The calves don't even have to be born yet. You might want to take a look at that. I realize LRP doesn't always work for fat cattle, for guys that are feeding cattle and selling fats. It's very good for those that are growing cattle, but also pretty intriguing for guys that are raising cows and calves, guys. And you guys are the ones that always retain all your risk. Lay some of that stuff off, stay in business. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on DV auction. Late in the day on Wednesday, set at 173.61, down another 39 cents, and it just continues to drop. It's below what your spot month on your feeder cattle futures is, and your real-time index is quite a bit below your CME cash feeder cattle index, because we are picking up more and more sales. It's in the region where it's supposed to be collected from, but whenever you've got the CME feeder cattle index collected with government market reports, they're not covering that many sales, especially in Kansas. You know, covering 2 or 3 sales in Kansas. There's a sale barn on the corner of every street in Kansas, and most of them are big, and they're not covering hardly any of them. Don't forget, here on Friday, I'm going to be out in Fallon, Nevada at Nevada Livestock Marketing. Going to have a feeder cattle special there. Have around 2,000 head of those hard desert cattle. You can view and bid that sale at dvauction.com. We're also having a political rally called the Cattle Drive for Adam Laxalt. It's very important that we find the money to get his campaign going and get him elected out there in Nevada. It could be a key vote there in your Senate. Talk about your big sales on Wednesday. Excuse me. OKC West, El Reno, Oklahoma, 7,100 head. Feeder steers were steady to $3 higher than the tough market they had previous week. Feeder heifers $1 to $3 higher. Demand was best on the heavier feeding cattle. Calves $6 to $9 lower, and I've told you why. There's no place to put them, nothing to feed them, guys. You just hate to lock a 4 or 5 weight calf up in a feedlot for the rest of its life, and you can't get any cheap gain on them at all. So, you know, the market is just completely evaporated for light calves, even our big strings of reputation calves. Few long-weaned calves there, people that had the ability to keep them and get them long-weaned, sold kind of steady to weak, but probably didn't pay off for them, and I hate to say that, but did sell one big long string of yearling steers that looked pretty impressive to me. 310 head 871 pound steers selling one whack at 174.20, and that would be over your index levels, weighing close to 9, guys. Pretty good quote there. How about winter livestock, Dodge City, Kansas, 2,600 head. Tried to get the quote there. You've heard me talk about your market reporting from federal, state government reports there. If you can make heads or tail out of that, more power to you. I've been analyzing market reports for over 30 years, and I could not make heads or tails out of that other than it was mixed, and I would have to say very mixed, because I don't know where it was at. But something that was interesting in that report said that over 600 pound cattle in their feeder cattle auction was only 41%, which was typical in what we saw at Oklahoma National Stockyards on Monday. Stick-out sale of yearling feeders in Dodge City was 51 steers, weighed 814 at 180.25. Very impressive there. Your Zoeta stick-out sale of the day was Cherokee Sales Company in Cherokee, Oklahoma. That's western Oklahoma, very rural there. And look at the trends on here. Look at this automated market report from Cattle Market Central, 3,600 feeders there. And look at the trends over there on the right-hand side. That's the change on your weighted average from the previous week. You'd think we could find people that could look at that and write it down in a market report, but evidently they can't. But somebody's got to train people, and they don't even report a sale like Cherokee with 3,600 head of cattle there, and that's pitiful. But look at your best tested weights, and they were well tested all throughout. And just look at the hires. I think there was one that was $1.50 lower on 8-weight steers, which would be expected, but 444 head of 5-weight steer calves averaged 568 at 180.87, up like $8. 464 head of 6-weight steers averaged 643 at 174.41, $4 higher. 460 head of 8-weight steers averaged 844. They were like $1.50 off on the weighted average, bringing 170.104 on the average. On the heifers, 303 head of lightweight 4-weight heifers averaged 458 at 176.36. That was a bunch higher. And 538 head 5-weight heifers averaged 550 at 166.58. It was also sharply higher on your lightweight heifers. Good sale there at Cherokee Sales Company. Going to give you some individual quotes around the country. I told you about some replacement quality heifers that they were going to have in Perkins, Oklahoma at Payne County Stockyards. They indeed sold those heifers, and they were good. 89 head of them weighed 526, bring $171 headed to Iowa, and I'm sure to go on feed. Talked to Bill Martin at Lone Star Stockyards. They had a really good sale on Tuesday, and I didn't see anything impressive enough to include in your individual quotes. But he said, we did have one long string of yearlings there, and I know the price might not have impressed you, but he said it was a big long string, nearly 800 head. They did give an option on them, but 797 head of 1.5 kind of mixed Okies and crossbreds together. Now that doesn't paint a pretty picture, but that's the kind of cattle we feed down in this country. And but he said they were good hard yearlings there. 797 head of them weighed 789 at 168.60. And he said if you'd have seen those cattle, you'd have been pretty impressed with them. How about North Arkansas Livestock, Green Forest, Arkansas? Right through the ring there, Green Forest, they sell 188 head of 858 pound steers at 172.10. That's a pretty good quote, guys. They had a sale in Bassett, Nebraska at Bassett Livestock Auction, 3,800 head there. Look at this automated market report. You see your best tested weights, and it wasn't well tested throughout, but spotty. 711 head of 5-weight steers in Bassett averaged 553. The weighted average price of $213.72. 584 head of 9-weight steers in Bassett averaged 963 at 181.14. Look at the heifers. 217 head of 8-weight heifers averaged 856. Some were spayed. with a weighted average price of $170.99, and 313 headed 9-weight heifers averaged $966 with a weighted average price of $166.17. Best quote that I saw, most impressive on Wednesday, your Mackerson No BS top quote for the day, come out of Torrington Livestock Markets, Torrington, Wyoming. 100 head, 570 pound steer calves bring $217.50. That's your feeder flash for Thursday.